Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I thought today I would do a book tag trend that I did in 2019, and I did 19 books to read in 2019. Honestly, if I go back and look at that list, I probably read not many, which is embarrassing, but with 2021 coming up, by the time this video goes up, actually it'll be 2021, which is crazy to think about, but I thought I would do 21 books I want to read in 2021. Now, for reference, I did not read 21 books this year, so saying that these books are just some of the ones I want to read in 2021 is very laughable. But I just kind of went over my bookshelf, books that I already owned. These don't include my pre-orders for 2021. So these are books that I already own that I really would like to get off of my TBR. So I figured I would go ahead and just kind of share my thought process with you guys. So these books are in no particular order. They're just kind of how I saw them on my bookshelf. Basically, the way that I am currently set up, my camera is doing a lot of auto-focusing. I have some books here at my apartment, most books at my parents' house, but the books at my parents' house are a lot of them in boxes because I need to go through them. I just don't have enough room at my parents' house anymore for all of these books. So I had a storage unit for a long time before I got my apartment, and I kind of just stored books there. And now I really need to go through them and decide what I am going to keep. Okay, so the autofocusing just got really bad with my camera, so I just restarted it. But yeah, so moving into the books that the whole point of this video, the first book that I want to read in 2021 is Dear Evan Hansen. So I saw this Broadway show towards the end of 2019 when we could still go to Broadway shows. That was me and my mom's favorite thing to do, was to go and see shows that were currently touring. So I live in Florida, so we would go to Tampa or Orlando, Florida to see a Broadway show that was on tour, and I loved the soundtrack for Dear Evan Hansen. Basically, on my Apple Music top 10 albums, 9 of them were Broadway, and the number 10 was Folklore by Taylor Swift. So I love listening to Broadway music. I love finding new albums, getting immersed in the story. So when I saw that Dear Evan Hansen was coming, me and my mom bought tickets, and I loved the Broadway show. I think I cried the entire second half. So I would really love to read the book that goes along with it. The Broadway show did come out first, so I felt right in watching the Broadway show first before reading the book, but now I would definitely like to dive into the book and see how that plays out. The second book on this list is Fangirl by Rowell. I have owned this book probably since 2015 or 16. I have a limited edition Target edition, and I have always meant to read it. It just never ends up in my hands. So that is on the top of my priority list this year, is to finally read Fangirl. Everyone says that I would love it. Everyone says that I would like Rowell. The production company that is working on Along for the Ride, my book, is also currently working on Eleanor and Park by Rowell. So I would definitely like to dive into some of her work, and I figured Fangirl is a good place to start. The next book I have on my list is Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Again, I have owned this book. I actually pre-ordered this book before it came out, and I have just never read it. A big thing for me in books is mental health representation. I feel like that is very important and very much overlooked in the YA community. So I know that in Turtles All the Way Down there is OCD representation, which I just think is so important. I hear that it's really well handled and talked about in the book, and so I would definitely like the chance to finally read it. The next book on my list is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This was gifted to me for Christmas, and it was on my wish list. I read the synopsis and I knew that I would love it. I'm just not currently buying myself very many books. I still have pre-orders. I had pre-orders this past year, but I'm trying really hard to cut back on buying books until I read some of my backlog. So You Should See Me in a Crown was one that I absolutely wanted, and if I hadn't gotten it for Christmas, I would have bought it myself. But I was very lucky in that I did get it for Christmas from my Secret Santa. I really don't know much about the story. Number one, the cover is gorgeous, and number two, I just saw a lot of hype about it on Twitter and social media, and that's pretty much how you get me to pre-order or buy a book. Is if you talk about it like you love it, I will absolutely end up buying it. So after seeing all of the hype for the book, I'm really excited to have my hands on it and to hopefully read it in the upcoming year. The next book I have on this list is Smash It by Francina Simone. This is a book that I actually ended up pre-ordering, and again, it had a lot to do with the love it was getting in the book community that I kind of follow a little bit on Twitter. So I don't know much about the story. What I do know is it is about a girl in high school who suffers from some insecurities and decides to just smash her, I don't know what year it is, sophomore, junior, senior year, something like that, and decides to smash it, let go of those insecurities, and start to follow her heart. And that just sounds like a really fun read, and I don't actually read a lot of lighthearted stories, which is something I realized when looking back on the books I had read this year, was they all dealt with something like hard-hitting. Well, not all. A lot of them dealt with something hard-hitting, and so I'm trying to incorporate more lighthearted reads just to hopefully get myself back into the reading game. Next on this list is Made You Up by Francesca Zappia. Did I say that right? By Francesca Zappia. So this year I finally read Eliza and Her Monsters. I've had that book on my TBR forever, and that was one of my quarantine reads, and I loved it. It was one of my only 5 out of 5 star reads this year. It was just amazing. And so as soon as I finished it, I immediately ordered the next book that Francesca had available, and that was Made You Up. I don't know a single thing about the story other than it was written by Francesca Zappia, and I want to devour more of her work. The next book I have is Boyfriend Material by Alexis Hull. I, again, admittedly don't know much about this story. I pre-ordered it because I saw an account on Twitter, and I don't know what the account is. I don't actually even follow them, but they raved about this book so much that I immediately had to pre-order it. And for those who don't know, Red, White, and Royal Blue is one of my all-time favorite reads, and this has been compared to that book. So those things combining, I actually pre-ordered the book. I've had it for a while, and I don't want to say 100, but I am 99% sure I will be reading this one in 2021. All right, so I apologize for all of the autofocus issues that the camera has been having. I've honestly never had much of an issue with the autofocus, only usually when I'm out walking and vlogging. But for some reason, this camera does not like whatever setup I have going on right now, and it doesn't feel like it can focus. So I will be working to correct those settings as we come into the new year. I really honestly have owned this camera since 2015, and I don't know much about it. I'm not a techie person, so yeah, I will definitely be working to fix this issue because it is driving me crazy. So the next book I have on this list is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. So when I was writing Along for the Ride, I purchased a lot of books in relation to bands and touring and anything to do with that aspect, as well as movies. I watched so many documentaries and admittedly watched the Jonas Brothers World Tour documentary, but like a lot of documentaries, I read a lot of material just trying to make sure that I was being as accurate as possible. And one of the books I picked up was Daisy Jones and the Six. I never ended up reading it before my final edits for Along for the Ride, but I have heard great things about the book. And even though I am completely done with edits for Along for the Ride, I would still love to dive into the story. The next book I have on this list is How to Make Friends with the Dark by Kathleen Glasgow. Another one of my all-time favorite reads is Girl in Pieces by Kathleen Glasgow. So when she was announcing her newest work, which was How to Make Friends with the Dark, I pre-ordered it with the intention of reading it when it came in. However, I obviously never got to it. So I love Kathleen Glasgow's writing style. I loved Girl in Pieces, and so I highly anticipate loving this story as well. The next book on this list is Tiny Pretty Things by Danielle, Clayton, and Sonia, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce her last name, but I will have it here on the screen. So I bought this book years ago in a haul from Book Outlet, who I no longer support. But at the time, I was doing big hauls from Book Outlet, and I picked up this book on a whim, and now it is a TV series on Netflix, which is so exciting. I love to see books that are made into movies and TV shows because you know how much hard work and dedication went into that by the author, and it's just such an amazing feeling as an author to feel that your work is being recognized. When I heard the book was being turned into a show, I immediately wanted to read it. However, I do think this is one of the books that is in the mini, like the 4 or 5 boxes of books that I have to go through because I can't find it on my bookshelf anywhere. So I will be attempting to find that and read it hopefully early in 2021 because I really do want to see the TV show, but I'm a stickler for reading the book first. The next book on this list is Hidden Figures by Margot Lee Shetterly. If you've been around on my channel, you know that this was also on my Reading Rush TBR, which I never did a follow-up video for, surprise, surprise. But I did not make it to this book. I actually only ended up reading like 2 or 3 books for the week of Reading Rush. But Hidden Figures was not one of the books that I ended up picking up, but I definitely want to. I saw the movie first, which is a big no-no for me, but to my defense, I didn't know that it was a book. I saw the movie and fell in love with it. Raved about this movie to all of my friends. And then when I was doing further research, because I just wanted to know how accurate the movie was, I found the book and I immediately purchased it with the intent to read it, and that is still my intent in 2021. The next book on this list is If I'm Being Honest, and I'm going to read the author's names because I've tried to memorize these and I can't, but the author for this is Austin Siegemund-Broka and Emily Wibberley. So this was actually another book that was on my 19 books to read in 2019, and I never did, but I still very much want to read it. So basically this follows the story of a girl named Carmen who is a class A bitch, and her crush sees her doing basically one of the most bitchiest things that she does. I don't know what that thing is, but her crush witnesses it, and Carmen decides that she needs to basically go on an apology tour and right her wrongs. So I think that sounds like a really fun concept, and I would really like to read that one in 2021, obviously, because it's in this video. So the next book on this list is Michigan versus the Boys by Carrie Allen. Basically follows the story of a girl the girls' hockey team gets cut due to budget cuts, and she ends up joining the boys' hockey team. And I think this concept sounds amazing. I have read a story like it called Puck You on Wattpad by Peyton Novak, and I also have a story of my own called League of Her Own, formerly One of the Boys, where a girl plays on a boys football team. And I just love the idea of a strong female lead taking on a role that is previously not offered to her. And I love that concept, and I know I would love this book. The next book on this list is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. So I read The Hate You Give, I think in 2018 with the Wattpad Stars book club. And when I saw Angie Thomas had another book coming out that was similar, but had a completely different main character and storyline. However, it still took place in the same neighborhood, which I love that idea. So I pre-ordered it and I've had it ever since. and I think I would really enjoy this story if I finally picked it up. So the next story on this list is If You Knew by Barbara Meyers. Barbara Meyers is the, I guess, head of the writing group in my city that I attend. It'll be twice a month now, starting in January. But she is part of the Florida Writers Association, and she has so many books, like so many books. And one of them is this one, If You Knew. And it follows the story of a girl who moves back to her hometown to kind of start fresh and start over. That is until the secret of her adult films comes to light. And then we have a troubled male who, I love a troubled male. I love a brooder. So his name is Luke, which is the perfect name for a troubled male. Sorry if your name is Luke. In a story, Luke is just like one of the perfect names. And he has demons of his own that he is battling, and they come together. And I think it sounds so cute. So that is definitely on my to-read list. So the next story on my list is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha. Here is her last name. This story I don't really know much about. I don't read much fantasy, but it was definitely a priority of mine, I think, in 2019 to read more fantasy, which I feel like I did. I definitely read a lot more fantasy than I ever have, seeing as though the bar was set at 0. So Girls of Paper and Fire. I don't remember much about the concept. I know the cover is gorgeous, and it sounded really good when I pre-ordered it. But in my quest to read more fantasy, I have a really hard time just wanting to pick it up and wanting to read it. So I am going to try and find books that really appeal to me. And Girls of Paper and Fire definitely did. The next book I have is Sea Witch by Sarah Henning. This is another book that I actually pre-ordered, and then when the pre-order time came up, I had no money. So the pre-order didn't go through, but I ended up picking it up in one of my book outlet hauls, and it has been on my TBR since. Anyone that knows me knows that my favorite Disney princess movie is The Little Mermaid. I love The Little Mermaid. And I have definitely wanted to kind of dive into the world of fairy tale retellings. And Sea Witch sounds like such a cool retelling of Ursula. And it fulfills my want to read more fantasy. This next book is Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst. This has been on my to-read list for so long. I think I finally picked it up in 2019. And is basically an LGBTQ plus story. We have 2 women characters, 2 women love interests. I know that there is a royal aspect to the story, whether it's a princess who's already betrothed to someone or something along those lines. But I just think that sounds so fun, and especially love the representation in this story, and I'm excited to hopefully read it. The next book on this list is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. Again, this has been a book that I have wanted to read for a long time. I finally picked it up in 2019. On my first quest to read more fantasy, this was suggested to me by my good friend Ali Novak, who knows that I love stories that follow just like the brooding boy scene. I don't really know how to explain it. The bad boys. Why can't I think of that word? I love a good bad boy book. And so she recommended The Raven Boys to me at that time. And I didn't pick it up. I think that was in 2018. And then I saw it on sale in one of the buy swap book groups that I'm in. And I decided to go ahead and pick it up with the intention of diving more into fantasy. And with that still being my goal in 2021, I think a good bad boy book is a perfect opportunity. The next book on my list is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This is another one of the books I don't know much about, but I saw a lot of hype for it when it first came out, and I had pre-ordered it, so I now own it. And what I do know is that it's basically like a school of girls is infected by this disease, and they start dying off one by one, and they're basically quarantined to die. I hate using the word quarantine like that since quarantine has been a big part of 2020. I think that's a really interesting concept and I would love to learn more. And the very last book on this list is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. So I own a lot of Marissa Meyer books for someone who has never read her. I own the entire retelling series, like the Cinder, and I don't remember the names anymore, but I bought the series as a pack because I really wanted to get into fairy tale retellings. I haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. However, I figured Heartless would be a good place to start, as this is an Alice in Wonderland retelling from what I understand. And so I am really looking forward to, again, fantasy and fairy tale retellings and kind of just that whole thing in 2021. So if you made it through this video, thank you so much for sticking with me. My dog was playing in the background a lot of this video, and I had the whole autofocusing issue, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos. I'm hoping to make this a regular thing in 2021. And with that, I'm going to head out. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye.